Hi, I'm Tim Clark, and I hope you enjoy the video that you're about to watch. If so, please let me know by clicking the subscribe button. Well, hi, I'm Tim Clark, and today I'm out of the studio and I'm actually in the History Museum on the square in Springfield, Missouri, and I'm visiting with John Sellars, who is going to teach us and tell us a lot of great information on Route 66 and about Springfield, Missouri being the birthplace of Route 66. So John, thank you so much for joining us and our viewers today.
Happy to be here.
So John, just start talking. Tell us about the Route 66, why there was a need for it, and the history of it, and then later go into Springfield's role.
All right. Well, as the 20th century was beginning, there was just an explosion of automobiles. 1916, there were 122 different brand names of vehicles licensed in the state of Missouri. 122 names. Now, out of that 122 names, there are only 5 of them that are still in existence today. And that's including the Rolls-Royce as being one of the 122. But 122 different brands of automobiles. People were just really getting excited and involved in motor transportation. And with that came a need for better roads, or at least well-maintained roads, if not better. And so groups began to form around the states called Good Roads Committees. And these Good Roads Committees worked to develop and help develop roads and road maintenance in a way that would be the best for those locations. Now, Springfield has been a crossroads since Native American time. This was the confluence, this was where 5 Native American trails met because it was a place where there was a lot of fresh water. And so those 5 Native American trails then became the most well-traveled trails for settlers coming into this area because they were already beaten down and already marked. And so we were always a crossroads. That's part of what we talk about in the museum, being the crossroads of this area. And so all of these Good Roads Committees would work, and they would have little events where they would take their motor cars and go as a group and make little short circuits and trips. One of that group was one to Joplin. Now, Joplin by automobile today is probably just a little less than an hour's drive. This took 3 days.
3 days.
A day down, a day there, and a day back. And so that was those Good Roads Committees developed and began to work with each other to promote extended highways. And with that, the federal government began to work through the Department of Agriculture, of all things, to begin to number the roads, because up till that time, the only way to really travel from place to place, point to point, if you hadn't been there before, was a group of 5 volumes called the Blue Book. And that Blue Book was like a little Encyclopedia Britannica of traveling routes across the country, all done by waypoints. Go to the barn with the red roof and turn to the right, and then go to the fork in the road and turn left, and so on and so forth. And that was how they got you from point A to point B.
And approximately what decade was this?
This was all the way up till after World War I. And by that time, they had seen the roads and highways in other countries, and they were numbered. And those numbered roads made it so much easier. You could have a map then with numbered roads on it, rather than going from waypoint to waypoint. And so there was really a push to put these numbered highways together. And the influence was that the east-west highways, the transcontinental highways, the most important routes across would be the ones ending in 0. So from 10 to 90, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on, each one of those would be, the 0 highway would be the most important through that area. And they began to politic and develop these highways. A man named Cyrus Avery out of Tulsa, and here a man named John T. Woodruff. And they worked together and worked with other states to get a route from Chicago to Los Angeles. and they applied to the federal government to get a number for that road, and they asked for number 60. And the highway department in Washington awarded them that number. And they even printed maps with the number from Chicago to LA being Highway 60. And then the governor of the state of Kentucky got into the mix. He realized that there was no numbered highway through his state. And so he went to the government, went to Washington, and lobbied to get the number 60 taken away from Springfield, or from this route from Chicago to LA, taken away from them because it wasn't transcontinental. It was only from Chicago to the West Coast. And he said it had to be a route from one coast to the other. And so the government agreed with him, and they took the number 60 away from this route that was through here, and offered them the number 62, which their inference was that was second best, that was a number 2. They weren't having any of it. They just said, nope, keep your number 62. We're not going to have any part of it if you're not going to keep us with number 60. And so they kept in contact with each other, but they didn't hold that much hope. And then there was in April of 1926, there was a Rotary Club convention here in Springfield. And that Rotary Club convention attracted a lot of these people that had been on that committee that had gotten the highway from Chicago to LA here in Springfield for the convention. And they met at the Colonial Hotel just down the street here on St. Louis Street, which was owned by John T. Woodruff. And they met at Mr. Woodruff's hotel, had a meeting, and they noticed that 66 hadn't been taken. And they thought, man, that's really kind of catchy. And they wrote it out, and they looked at it different ways, and they said, you know, that might be the thing to do. It's got a neat connotation, a neat look to it. Let's do that. And so they sent a telegram from the Colonial Hotel to Washington, D.C., saying that if the other states along the route agreed, they wanted the number 66. And so the whole thing came to fruition here in Springfield. A telegram was sent on the 30th of April, 1926, and by that fall, we had the Route 66 number, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Is there any correlation between Phillips 66 and Route 66 because the typeface is almost identical?
Yeah, because Phillips changed their gas to 66 and we had Campbell 66, which was the biggest truck line in the Midwest, which had been Campbell's truck line, and then it became Campbell 66. There are a lot of things that 66 number, it was just so catchy and it looked so good, especially in certain typefaces, that they really felt compelled to absorb it into their brands.
Can you tell me about the explosion or the migration that was Route 66 experienced during two things, the Depression and the Dust Bowl, and also World War II?
It was extraordinary. The Depression, the Dust Bowl, there was just nothing left for those people in the Midwest. Years of drought, over farming, there was just nothing left for them. And the opportunity to move to a more industrialized area and a place that was kind of on the Grove there on the West Coast, it sounded so good and so enticing that they just packed what belongings they had into their old cars and headed off. And the romance of that opportunity and that off in the future just led them on to the West Coast. And a lot of people, even from here, went to the West Coast and then over the years migrated back.
And what about World War II? Did the military use Route 66?
They did. One of the biggest Army bases came to fruition. Fort Leonard Wood, big training base, was on Route 66, just east of here. And there were other training bases and places along Route 66 all the way to both ends.
So talk to me about then the demise of Route 66 with the interstate system. How did that happen?
Uh, that happened because of World War II. President Eisenhower was very impressed with the Autobahn system in Germany. Big roads that went around cities and didn't go through any intersections or anything, just had exits off of them, limited access highways. And he was very, very impressed with those and said that the United States needed those limited access highways. So he began in earnest to push for that in the late 50s. And that continued on even after he was out of office in 1960. And those limited access highways became the driving force in breaking up the old highway system.
Tell me about the new excitement that seems to be happening on Route 66, not just for Americans, but for people all around the world.
It's extraordinary when you think back to all of the, as I said, romantic and emotional things that are involved in that, the opportunities and the way that people envision their future, just getting out on that highway and taking off with all their hopes in their heart and very little else. It really enthuses and excites people. We've had visitors from well over 50 countries, all of the continents, who come here just to say that they set foot on it, just to say that they spent a little time, not even necessarily traversing the whole thing, but just to say that they were on a portion of it, and to feel good about that. And that is generating more and more Route 66 events, like our festival that we have here in August, where people can come and share their stories. I mean, I grew up on St. Louis Street here in Springfield, which was Route 66 and back in the day. So it's amazing. It is amazing to try to recapture that feeling of adventure and feeling of anticipation.
And to add to that, the nostalgia of a time of Americana. I've recently, just yesterday, spoke to a young couple. That's what's interesting. They look to be in their late 20s or maybe early 30s from Italy. I was in Miami, Oklahoma, and visiting with them, and they'd been saving their money and been planning a trip on Route 66 for over a year. I also spoke to a woman in Finland, and she said, Route 66 is really, really popular in Finland, and people save their money, and that's a big deal to come travel Route 66.
We had two couples come into the museum one day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and they were both obviously from England by their accents. One was a couple that had just been married, and this was their honeymoon trip, and the other couple had been married 30 years, and it was their anniversary trip. And I wish I could have gotten together, but I had, we had no idea where they were staying or anything. But one in the morning and one in the afternoon.
Yeah. So tell me just a little bit, maybe we've already explained it, but the nostalgia of Americana that Route 66 represents.
That feeling of aspiration, that feeling of nothing is impossible. Everything that if you can dream it, you can make it happen. That was envisioned in Route 66. I mean, it was started in 1926, and it wasn't completely paved until 1938. 12 years, portions of it were still crushed rock and dirt, and it changed. The route changed. There are 4 different routes through the city of Springfield. As time changed and the city restructured and redid, that route was changed to accommodate that. The flexibility and the just new vision, just taking it a different way.
John, do you have any other closing comments, anything that you'd like to just speak about Route 66 or your museum?
Yeah. We're very proud. We're very proud of the museum. We're very proud of the stories we tell here. And this story of Route 66 is the capstone of our museum. It's why it's got most of this 3rd floor. It's a wonderful story and a multitude of stories within a story. And that's what makes it great, and we love to have people come in and visit and share their stories with us as well.
Thank you, John, so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit with me and our viewing audience. And viewing audience, I highly recommend and suggest that you stop by the History Museum on the square in Springfield, Missouri. Thank you for watching this video. You know, I just love Route 66 and the era of Americana that Route 66 represents. Producing these videos is my way of giving back to Route 66 and to promote Route 66 to people not just in the United States, but to people all around the world. Now, if you enjoy watching these videos, please let me know by clicking the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified when new videos are posted, then just simply ring the bell.